Hey everybody, this is Dustin with www.gamblingonfreedom.com. I'm a certified hypnotherapist specializing in problem gambling, gambling addiction, compulsive gambling. And in today's video, I want to talk about how you might have tried everything to stop gambling and why nothing worked. Picture this. You've stopped before, maybe more than once. You know what it feels like to walk away, that quiet, solid thing in your chest that says, this time is different. And for a while, it is. You sleep better, you're more present, you start doing the math on what you're going to do with the money, you're not losing anymore. And then something happens, or nothing happens, and you're back to gambling. The worst part probably isn't the money. Most likely, it's the confusion because you know you don't want this. You've proven you can stop. So, why does it keep coming back? That question is what this video is about. Not how do I get more willpower, but the real thing, the one underneath all of it, the one that sounds like, what is actually happening inside of me and why hasn't anything I've tried actually fixed it? I've worked with people on this for quite a while. And I want to say something to you right at the top. The fact that you've tried and struggled is not evidence that you're broken. It's not evidence that you lack discipline or you don't care enough. It's evidence that you've been handed the wrong map. And when you have the wrong map, it doesn't matter how hard you walk, you're not going to end up where you want to go. Let's look at the actual map of the problem. So here's a story that most people get about gambling addiction. It's a bad habit. Bad habits are maintained by people who don't want it badly enough. Other people quit easily and they quit things every day. So if you can't stop, it must say something about your character, your values, your willpower. That's the model that is pretty much everywhere in how your family looks at you when you relapse and how most programs are structured and the way you talk to yourself at 2 a.m. after a bad night. Now, I'm not saying that willpower doesn't exist. I'm saying it is the wrong tool for this specific pattern. And I can show you why that is with one question. Has there ever been a time when walking away from gambling felt easy, when it wasn't a battle? For most people, that answer is yes. Early on, maybe, or during certain seasons of life when something else had your complete and full attention, when things felt full in a different way, you could easily walk away. So if this was purely a willpower problem, those moments wouldn't exist. A willpower deficiency is consistent, but your experience is inconsistent. Sometimes the pool is overwhelming, sometimes it's almost quiet, and you can't always predict which it's going to be. That inconsistency is the clue. It means that this isn't about willpower. It's about state. It's about what's happening inside you in the moments when the pool becomes irresistible versus the moments when it doesn't. The willpower model sort of ignores state entirely. It treats the behavior of gambling like a conscious decision made in full awareness. Just choose differently. But that's not what the pool feels like, is it? It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a current. And you've been trying to swim against that current with nothing but grit and willpower. So let's talk about where the current actually comes from. You see, your brain has one primary job, and it's not happiness and it's not success. It's a job to maintain equilibrium or homeostasis, to move you away from discomfort and toward relief. That is the whole operating system. Gambling does something very specific inside that system. The moment the bet is placed, that spike of anticipation, that moment of maybe, your brain will release dopamine. And dopamine isn't really about pleasure. It's more about a chemical of anticipation. It's more precise than pleasure. It's possibility, right? It's something is about to happen. And your nervous system will file a spike of anticipation as relief, as safety, as this is what makes the discomfort stop. Over time, that becomes a learned pattern. It's automatic. Your nervous system starts reaching for gambling the way it reaches for anything it associates with relief, not as deliberate choice, more like a reflex, a pull that seems to come from nowhere, but is actually coming from a very specific place. Here's where it compounds. That artificial spike sets a new baseline. Your nervous system gets calibrated to the level of stimulation, and ordinary life starts to feel not necessarily terrible, but just flat, mundane, muted, like the volume has been turned down on everything in life. And so the pull toward gambling isn't really about excitement or greed or even the money. It's about returning to the state your nervous system now recognizes as normal, as the level it expects to be at. And that is why you can sit there with every reason in the world to not gamble, your family, your finances, your promises to yourself, and still feel a pull that logic doesn't touch. Because the pull isn't coming from your logic, it's coming from a system that is millions of years older than your reasoning mind. A system that is doing exactly what it was designed to do. This is not weakness. This is your brain functioning normally, your nervous system functioning normally. It's a pattern. That's all it is. That's been hijacked by gambling. Let's go through a few different approaches here, not to dismiss them, but to show exactly where each one stops working and why. So let's take the willpower white-knuckling approach, right? It works until it doesn't. You're essentially arm wrestling your own nervous system every single day. And it holds until it gets really hard, really stressful, really painful, really exhausting. And then eventually that lid comes off. And because you never actually changed what was boiling underneath, you were just sort of holding it down and suppressing it. The pressure doesn't disappear. It just builds and builds and builds. And then you go gamble, right? Accountability and check-ins. These assume that awareness of consequence is the missing ingredient. That if someone is watching, you'll make better choices. And sometimes that can help. But in the moments when the pull is strongest, you're not in a rational decision-making state. The part of your brain that cares what your accountability partner thinks gets quieter. The part reaching for relief gets louder. You're not choosing to let people down. You're in a state where the usual guardrails have receded. Accountability works on conscious choices. This isn't always a conscious choice. Self-exclusion and blocking are useful for reducing access, but access is also not the root. If it were, the urge would stop when the access did. Instead, the urge stays and the urge stays and just reroutes itself, essentially, because your nervous system drives to seek relief. It doesn't stop when one door closes, it just finds another one. And then you have traditional therapy and CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. These are genuinely good things, but CBT works at the level of sort of thoughts and behaviors. It helps you identify cognitive distortions, build behavioral substitutes, and all of that has real merit, it really does. But this is a state problem, not a primarily cognitive problem. Changing your thinking about gambling while your nervous system is still running the underlying pattern is like changing the labels on the controls without rewiring anything underneath. Thoughts are downstream of state. If leaving the state unchanged means the thoughts will just come back. So here's sort of the through line across all of it. Every one of these approaches is aimed at the behavior or the output. The behavior is not the problem. If you've watched this channel before, you already know gambling addiction or any addiction is just the attempted solution to the real problem. The behavior, the gambling, is not the problem. It's the symptom. It's the attempted solution. The problem is the state that the behavior is serving, the internal experience that gambling is regulating. Until you address that internal experience, you're just managing symptoms. And the symptom management collapses the moment life becomes unmanageable, right? When life stops being manageable, all of those symptom management tools fail, all of them. It's not a failure of character. That's just the logical outcome of working on the wrong level. And so here's the piece that most approaches don't touch, right? And it's the reason that even when someone does make real progress, something still pulls them back, and that is identity. Gambling over time doesn't just stay as a behavior, it expands it. It organizes your life around itself. It creates a relationship with time, the anticipation before, the action during, the processing after. It creates a relationship with money, not just spending it, but the emotional charge around risk and possibility. It may have shaped your social world, and somewhere along the way, it became part of how you see yourself. Even if that self-image is painful, it's still familiar and it's known. And when you try to really leave that behind, not just stop the behavior temporarily, but actually walk away from the pattern, you're not just giving up a habit. You're threatening to dissolve a self, an identity. And the subconscious does not give up a self or an identity very quietly. So think about the questions that live underneath quitting. Who am I without this? What do I do with my evenings? How do I handle stress? What do I actually look forward to? If gambling has been organizing your emotional life for years, the honest answer to those questions might be, I genuinely don't know. And I don't know is one of the most threatening experiences the subconscious can have. So it reaches back for the known, not because it wants you to suffer, but because it's trying to protect you from the ambiguity of not knowing who you are without gambling. Your subconscious is not your enemy. The part of you that keeps returning to gambling is not sabotaging you, it's protecting you. Expensively, clumsily, in a way that is costing you more than it could ever save you. But the intention underneath is protection. It's continuity, it's safety, it's homeostasis. And you cannot fight that into submission. You've already learned that. You can't white knuckle it. What you can do is give it something better, not just an absence of gambling. Absence is a void. Voids are terrifying to the subconscious, but a presence, a version of yourself that feels as real and as livable as the old one your subconscious can actually recognize and inhabit. That shift from identity threat to identity replacement is where lasting change actually lives. And almost nobody talks about it. And if they do, they actually don't understand it, not usually. So 3 things, and they all work together. The first is the nervous system state. Your system has been calibrated to a level of stimulation it now treats as normal. That calibration needs to reset, not through deprivation or white knuckling it, but through genuinely learning to generate a felt sense of safety and aliveness from the inside, not from a bet, but from inside yourself. When that happens, ordinary life stops feeling so flat, and the pull towards gambling weakens, not because you're fighting it, but because what it was providing is no longer scarce. You already have now more aliveness in your everyday life. The second thing is what's underneath. Every pattern the subconscious protects is serving something. Relief, escape, control, aliveness. That underlying need doesn't disappear when you stop the behavior. It goes underground, it waits, which is why one thing so often replaces another. The real work is resolving what gambling was handling so that the subconscious mind genuinely doesn't need the deal it's been running anymore, because the problem it was solving is no longer there. And the third thing is the identity. You need a self to move into, not just one to leave behind. This isn't affirmations, it's the actual work of excavating who you are underneath the pattern, what you value, what you're drawn to, what kind of person you were becoming before all of this took up all the space. And starting to inhabit that person in small ways at first, then larger ones, until the new identity has enough substance and weight that the subconscious stops reaching back for that old gambling identity. These three things are the actual levers. Everything else is downstream of them. When you work on them directly, something different happens. Change stops feeling like a daily battle. It starts feeling like you're growing out of something, until one day you realize the pool has gone quiet. Not because you've been suppressing it, but because you've simply become someone it no longer fits, someone who no longer needs it. So if you've made it this far, hopefully something in this landed for you. And I'm not going to wrap this up with pressure. I offer a free consultation, not to pitch you on anything, but to actually sit down together and look at your specific situation. What's driving the pattern? What's been keeping it in place? And whether the kind of thing that I do is actually the right fit for you and where you are right now. Some people come out of that conversation and decide to work with me. Others come out with a clearer picture of themselves, and that alone is worth something. Some people come out of it and they don't want to work with me. Either way, you'll leave knowing more than you did going in. The link to book is in the description. It costs you nothing, but perhaps up to an hour of your time. And if you're not ready for that yet, that's fine too. Keep watching, keep asking the questions that brought you here. The fact that you're still looking for a real answer means some part of you already knows one exists. It does. And you're a lot closer to it than you think. That's it for now, guys. I hope that was helpful. I'll see you on the next one. All right. Take care.